Commander Jack Morrison stared at the strange signal on his screen. The lights in the control room of the exploration ship Aurora flickered as the message played again. It was not like any signal they had ever received before. The sounds were low and musical, almost like someone singing a sad song. "Sir, this signal is coming from the edge of our maps," said Navigator Emma Stone. She pointed to the star chart floating above their table. "It's near that dying star we marked last month." Jack rubbed his tired eyes. They had been exploring space for 3 years now, finding new planets and mapping unknown areas. Most of the time, they found empty worlds or dead rocks floating in space. This signal was different. Someone or something was calling for help. "Lisa, what do you think?" Jack asked the ship's medic. Lisa Carter looked up from her medical scanner. She had been checking the crew for any signs of space sickness. "The signal sounds desperate, Commander. Like someone who has been alone for a very long time." Chief Engineer Ryan Blake walked into the room, wiping oil from his hands. "I've been listening to that signal for an hour. My computers can't make sense of it, but there's something about it that makes me want to help." Jack made his decision. "Set course for the signal source. We'll check it out." The Aurora turned toward the dying star. As they got closer, their instruments began picking up something massive. It was bigger than any space station humans had ever built. The structure looked like an old church from Earth, but it was made of some kind of crystal that glowed with a weak light. "Commander, that thing is huge," whispered Emma. "It's at least 10 miles long. And it's old," added Ryan, reading his instruments. "My scanners say this thing has been here for thousands of years." As they approached the crystal station, the Aurora systems began acting strangely. The lights grew brighter, and the engines hummed with more power than usual. Lisa noticed that her medical equipment was glowing softly. "Something about this place is affecting our ship," she said. "But it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels peaceful." Jack opened communication channels. "This is Commander Morrison of the human ship Aurora. We received your distress signal. Do you need help?" A voice answered, deep and sad. "Humans. I have waited so long for someone to come. Please ward my station. I am the last one left, and my time grows short." The Aurora docked with the crystal station through an airlock that seemed to form itself as they approached. Jack, Lisa, Ryan, and Emma put on their spacesuits and walked through the connecting tunnel. Inside the station, they found themselves in a vast hall with a ceiling so high they could barely see it. The walls were covered with pictures that seemed to move and tell stories. The air was breathable, somehow clean and fresh despite the station's age. At the center of the hall stood a being unlike anything they had ever seen. It was 12 feet, tall and made of living crystal that pulsed with fading light. Where a human would have a face, there were gentle patterns of light that somehow expressed great sadness. "I am Keeper Zephin," the being said. His voice echoed in their minds rather than through their ears. "I am the last of the stellar knights." Lisa stepped forward without thinking. The alien looked so tired and sad that her medic training took over. "Are you hurt? Can we help you?" Something amazing happened. When Lisa spoke with genuine care in her voice, the crystal armor hanging on the walls began to glow softly. Zephin's light grew brighter for a moment. You truly wish to help," Zephin said with wonder. "It has been so long since anyone offered help without wanting something in return." Zephin began to tell them the story of the Stellar Knights. Long ago, when the galaxy was young, the Knights protected peace across 1,000 worlds. They had technology that seemed like magic. Their weapons grew stronger when used to protect others. Their armor became tougher when worn by those with pure hearts. Their ships could travel between stars in ways that normal science could not explain. "We were guardians," Zephin explained. For 10,000 years, we kept the peace. But power corrupts even the pure-hearted. Slowly, some knights began to use their abilities for personal gain. They fought over territory and treasure. They forgot that strength should be used to protect the weak. The alien's light dimmed as he continued. A sad tale? Wars broke out between different groups of knights. The sacred codes we lived by were broken. The technology that responded to pure hearts began to fail as hearts grew dark with greed and anger. Ryan looked around at the empty armor and weapons. What happened to all the other knights? Dead, Zephyr said simply. Some died in the wars. Others lost their connection to the knight powers and grew old naturally. A few, the worst ones, were consumed by the darkness they had embraced. I alone remained, keeping watch in this station, hoping that someday someone worthy would come. Emma studied the moving pictures on the walls. They showed great battles, peaceful negotiations, and knights helping people across many different worlds. Why didn't you try to train new knights? The technology only responds to certain qualities, Zephyr explained. Pure intention, willingness to sacrifice for others, the ability to see hope even in dark times. For centuries, I have waited for beings who possess these traits naturally. Jack felt a strange pull toward one of the empty suits of armor. It was simpler than the others, designed for leadership rather than flashy display. And you think? Humans might have these qualities? I hoped, but I was not certain, Zephyr admitted. Until now. As they spoke, more of the ancient equipment began to glow. Lisa's medical scanner started showing readings it had never displayed before. Ryan's repair tools hummed with new energy. Emma's navigation computer began mapping space in ways she had never seen. Jack's command interface showed tactical information that seemed to come from nowhere. The technology recognizes you, Zephyr said with growing excitement. It responds to your natural compassion, your teamwork, your refusal to abandon each other. These are the qualities the first knights possessed before they lost their way. Lisa approached Zephyr carefully. The alien's light was growing dimmer by the minute. You're dying, aren't you? I have lived far beyond my natural span, sustained only by hope and duty, Zephyr replied. But now that hope has been fulfilled, you have come. What do you want us to do? Jack asked. Zephyr gestured to the armor and weapons around the hall. Take up the mantle. Become the new stellar knights. But learn from our mistakes. Do not let power corrupt you. Do not fight among yourselves. Remember always that strength exists to protect others, not to rule them. The dying alien raised one crystalline hand, and 4 sets of armor descended from the walls. They were not the ornate, jeweled suits of the fallen knights. These were simpler, more practical, designed for beings who valued function over display. The technology will teach you as you learn to use it, Zephyr explained. But remember, it responds to your heart, not your mind. Be pure in your intentions, and it will serve you well. Use it for selfish purposes, and it will abandon you as it abandoned the fallen knights. Lisa reached out and gently touched Zephon's hand. The alien's light flared brightly, one last time before beginning to fade. Thank you for waiting for us, she said softly. We won't let you down. I know you will not, Zephyr whispered as his light dimmed to almost nothing. The legend lives again. As the last keeper of the Stellar Knights faded away, the 4 humans stood alone in the vast hall, surrounded by the tools and weapons of an ancient order. They had come looking for the source of a distress signal. Instead, they had found their destiny among the stars. After Zephon's light faded completely, the 4 humans stood in silence. The crystal hall around them still glowed softly, but it felt different now. Empty. Jack Morrison looked at his crew and saw the same mix of sadness and wonder in their faces that he felt in his heart. The ancient armor waited for them on pedestals that had risen from the floor. Each set was different, designed for the person who would wear it. Jack's armor was dark blue with silver trim, built for a leader. Lisa's was white with red crosses, clearly meant for a healer. Ryan's was bronze-colored with tools attached to the belt, perfect for an engineer. Emma's was deep green with star patterns, made for someone who traveled between worlds. Should we try them on? Lisa asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, the walls around them began to change. New pictures appeared, showing 3 different scenes. A voice spoke, not Zephon's, but something older and deeper, like the station itself was talking. The armor chooses its wearer through 3 trials, the voice said. These tests have been the same for 10,000 years. Only those who pass all 3 can become true knights. The first picture showed a great fire threatening to consume everything. The second showed 2 armies facing each other across a battlefield. The third showed a person standing alone in complete darkness. The test of sacrifice, the voice continued. The test of justice. The test of hope. Each of you must face all. 3 trials. Only together can you succeed where others have failed. The hall began to shift and change around them. Walls moved, new rooms formed, and suddenly they found themselves separated from each other. Jack called out, but his voice echoed in an empty chamber. Ryan found himself in what looked like the Aurora's engine room, but everything was wrong. Alarms were blaring, red lights flashed everywhere, and the main reactor was making a sound like a dying animal. The temperature was rising fast, and he could see radiation warnings on every screen. A holographic display appeared in front of him. Reactor core breach in progress. Automatic systems have failed. Manual shutdown requires someone to enter the core chamber. Radiation levels will be fatal within 60 seconds of exposure. Do you proceed? Ryan looked around the room. He could see other ways to try to fix the problem, safer methods that might work. But they would take time, and he could see from the displays that the station would explode before he could implement them. People were counting on him. His friends were counting on him. Without hesitation, Ryan grabbed the emergency radiation suit and ran toward the core chamber. The suit's warning system screamed at him as he entered the deadly area. His vision blurred from the radiation, and his hands shook as he manually shut down the reactor controls. He collapsed just as the reactor powered down safely. The test chamber faded away, and he found himself back in the crystal hall, wearing the bronze armor. It fit perfectly and felt like it had always been part of him. Meanwhile, Emma faced her own trial. She stood in what appeared to be a courtroom, but the judge's seat was empty. In front of her were 2 groups of aliens, both looking angry and desperate. The first group was tall and thin, with gray skin and large eyes. Their leader stepped forward. The Vorthen have stolen our water worlds, he said. For generations, we have lived on the ocean planets of the Kepler system. Now they come with their machines and take our seas. The second group was shorter and covered in fur. Their spokesman growled as he spoke. The Aquans abandoned those worlds centuries ago. We found them empty and made them our homes. We have children there now, families. They cannot force us to leave. Both groups turned to Emma. You must decide, they said together. Which of us has the right to the water worlds? Emma studied both groups carefully. She could see the desperation in their faces, the fear for their families. This was not about right and wrong. This was about survival. Tell me, she asked the Aquans, why did you leave the water worlds originally? A plague struck our people. The Aquan leader said sadly. The water became poisoned. We had to flee or die. Emma turned to the Vorthen. And you found these worlds empty and made them your home? Yes, the Vorthen replied. We have lived there for 200 years. Our children know no other home, Emma thought carefully. The water worlds are large, are they not? Vast oceans with many continents? Both groups nodded. Then here is my judgment, Emma said. The Aquans have the right to return to their ancestral home, but the Vorthen have the right to keep the homes they have built. You will share the worlds. The Aquans will help the Vorthen build underwater cities. The Vorthen will help the Aquans clean the poison from their ancient seas. Together, you will make the water worlds better than they ever were before. Both groups looked surprised and thoughtful, then hopeful. As they shook hands in agreement, the courtroom faded away. Emma found herself back in the hall, wearing her green armor with the star patterns. Lisa's test was different, but equally challenging. She found herself in a medical bay where injured people from many different species lay on beds around her. They were all hurt badly, and her medical scanners showed that she only had enough supplies to save half of them. But as she looked closer, she noticed something. The injured people were not random victims. Some wore the uniforms of soldiers. Others wore the robes of healers, and still others wore the simple clothes of farmers and teachers. A voice spoke in her mind. Choose who lives and who dies, healer. Save the soldiers, and you preserve those who can fight. Save the healers, and you preserve those who can help others. Save the farmers and teachers, and you preserve those who build and nurture. Lisa looked at all the injured people. They were watching her, waiting for her decision. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also trust. They believed she would make the right choice. No, Lisa said firmly. I refuse to choose. She began working frantically, using her medical knowledge in ways she had never tried before. She shared medicine between patients, used parts of her equipment in new ways, and found creative solutions for every problem. When her supplies ran low, she improvised. When her energy flagged, she pushed herself harder. The armor began to glow around her, and she realized it was helping. Her medical tools worked better, her hands moved faster, and her mind saw solutions she had never considered before. One by one, she saved every person in the medical bay. As the last patient opened their eyes and smiled at her, the medical bay faded away. Lisa stood in the crystal hall, wearing her white armor with the red crosses. Finally, it was Jack's turn. He found himself standing alone on what appeared to be the bridge of the Aurora, but everything was dark. Through the view screen, he could see that they were surrounded by enemy ships. His crew was gone, his weapons were offline, and his engines were dead. A voice spoke from the darkness. All is lost, Commander. Your crew is captured, your ship is broken, and your enemies circle like sharks. There is no hope. Surrender now, and perhaps some will be allowed to live. Jack looked around the empty bridge. Everything the voice said was true. By any reasonable measure, the situation was hopeless. But Jack Morrison had not become a commander by giving up when things looked bad. No, he said to the darkness. There is always hope. He began working at his command console, trying every system, checking every possibility. Most of the ship's systems were indeed dead, but he found small pockets of power here and there. He rerouted energy from life support to communications, sent out a distress call, then switched power to sensors to look for weaknesses in the enemy formation. The enemy ships moved closer, preparing to board. Jack kept working, refusing to give up. He found a way to restart one engine, then used it to ram the nearest enemy ship. As it exploded, he sent power to the shields, protecting the Aurora from the blast. Impossible, the voice said. You cannot win. Maybe not, Jack replied, still working at his console. But I can try, and as long as I can try, there is hope. One by one, he found ways to damage the enemy ships, to call for help, to protect his crew. The situation was still desperate, but it was no longer hopeless. And that made all the difference. The dark bridge faded away, and Jack found himself back in the crystal hall, wearing his blue and silver armor. His 3 friends stood beside him, all wearing their knight armor and looking amazed. "You have passed the trials," the station's voice said. "You have shown sacrifice, justice, and hope. You are worthy to carry on the legacy of the Stellar Knights." The armor felt warm and alive on their bodies. Their equipment had transformed completely. Jack's command tools now showed him tactical information from across the galaxy. Ryan's engineering. Devices could repair things that should have been impossible to fix. Emma's navigation equipment could chart courses through space itself. Lisa's medical supplies could heal wounds that went deeper than just the body. "This is just the beginning," Jack said, looking at his transformed crew. "We have a lot to learn." "And a lot of people to help," Lisa added, her armor glowing softly with her determination to heal others. The crystal station began to change around them. New rooms opened, filled with knowledge and equipment they would need. They were no longer just explorers in a small ship. They were the first of a new generation of knights, and the galaxy was waiting for them. 3 months after returning to Earth, Jack Morrison stood in front of the World Council and finished his report. The room was silent as he described their discovery of the Stellar Knights and the ancient technology that had chosen them. When he finished speaking, the questions came fast and hard. "This technology is incredibly powerful," said Counselor Williams from North America. "Shouldn't we keep it secret? Control who has access to it?" Jack looked at his fellow knights, who sat with him at the witness table. Lisa Carter shook her head slightly. Ryan Blake frowned. Emma Stone looked uncomfortable. They had discussed this question many times during their journey home. "No," Jack said firmly. "The original knights failed because they became secretive and controlling. They thought they knew better than everyone else. We won't make that mistake." "But the danger," another counselor began. "The danger comes from keeping it secret," Lisa interrupted. "The knight technology only works for people with pure hearts and good intentions. If someone tries to use it for selfish reasons, it will reject them." Within weeks, the news of the Stellar Knights spread across human space. The reaction was not what many government officials expected. Instead of panic or demands for the technology, most people were simply curious. They wanted to know more about these ancient guardians and what it meant for humanity's future. The first Knight Academy was built on Luna, Earth's moon. It was a simple complex, nothing like the grand crystal station where they had met Zephon. The builders followed Jack's instructions to make it welcoming and open, with large windows showing the stars and comfortable rooms for learning. The first group of candidates arrived from all over human space. There was Susan Brooks, a cargo pilot who had saved her crew when space pirates attacked their ship. Danny Clark, an engineer from the Mars colonies who had spent his savings to build water purifiers for poor settlements. Maria Santos, a teacher who had volunteered to work on the dangerous frontier worlds. Paul Johnson, a medic who had refused to leave his post during a plague outbreak. Remember, Jack told the new candidates on their first day, being a knight is not about having power over others. It's about using whatever abilities you have to help and protect. The training was different from anything the original knights had done. Instead of learning alone, the candidates worked in teams. They studied together, trained together, and faced challenges together. The knight technology seemed to respond even better to this approach. Susan Brooks and Danny Clark became the first knight pair. They discovered that when they worked together, their abilities were stronger than when they worked alone. Susan's pilot skills were enhanced by Danny's engineering knowledge, while Danny's technical abilities were improved by Susan's quick thinking in dangerous situations. Dr. Kevin Martinez, who had joined the program to study the knight healing technology, made an important discovery. The healing powers don't just fix physical injuries. he explained to Jack during one of their research sessions. They respond to genuine care and concern. The more a knight truly wants to help someone, the more effective the healing becomes. This discovery led to changes in how the knights approached their training. Instead of focusing only on combat and technical skills, they spent time learning about different cultures, studying psychology, and practicing empathy. The knight technology rewarded this approach by becoming more responsive and powerful. Commander Nicole Peters, a military officer who had joined the knight program, found that the tactical systems worked differently than normal military equipment. "It's strange," she told Jack during a training exercise. "The combat systems become more powerful when I focus on protecting people rather than defeating enemies. It's like the technology can read my intentions." As news of the knights spread, humanity began to change in ways that surprised even Jack and his team. Young people who had never thought about military service started volunteering for dangerous rescue missions. Scientists began working together more, sharing discoveries freely instead of competing for credit. Even politicians started focusing more on solving problems than on gaining power. But the transformation was not happening in isolation. Other species in the galaxy were watching humanity's development with growing concern. The Hegemony Alliance, a collection of warlike races that had filled the power vacuum left by the fallen knights, saw humanity's new abilities as a direct threat to their dominance. Admiral Krenex of the Hegemony fleet called an emergency meeting of the War Council. "These humans are becoming too powerful," he growled to the assembled generals. "If we allow them to fully develop their knight abilities, they will challenge our control of the outer systems." "But sir," one of his advisors said carefully, "our intelligence reports suggest that these new knights are different from the old ones. They seem more interested in helping than conquering." "It doesn't matter," Krenex replied. "Power is power. Once they realize how strong they can become, they will use that strength to impose their will on others. All species do this eventually." The Hegemony began preparing for war, but they were not the only threat stirring in the dark corners of the galaxy. Ancient enemies of the original knights, beings who had been waiting centuries for revenge, sensed the return of knight technology. They began to move from their hidden bases, gathering their forces for a strike against the New Order. Meanwhile, on the frontier world of New Texas, knight trainee Jake Henderson was learning about these growing threats firsthand. He and his partner, Marine Hannah White, had been sent to investigate reports of strange attacks on remote settlements. "The attacks are coordinated," Hannah reported during their evening briefing. "Someone is targeting places where knights are training or where knight technology is being studied." Jake studied the reports on his transformed tablet. The knight technology had enhanced his analytical abilities, allowing him to see patterns that normal computers might miss. "These aren't random raids," he said. "Someone is testing our defenses, learning our weaknesses." Back on Luna, Jack Morrison was receiving similar reports from knight teams across human space. The pattern was clear. Unknown enemies were probing the new knight installations, gathering intelligence for some larger plan. "We need to accelerate the training program," Lisa said during an emergency meeting of the senior knights. "If someone is planning to attack us, we need more knights ready to defend people." "But we can't rush the training," Ryan protested. "The knight technology has to choose each person individually. We can't force it." Emma looked at the star charts. On the table, her enhanced navigation skills showing her movement patterns across the galaxy. "The attacks are coming from multiple directions," she said. "This isn't just one enemy group. Someone is coordinating different factions against us." As if to prove her point, a priority message arrived from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. The communication officer's face was pale with fear as he delivered the news. "Sirs, we're detecting massive fleet movements in the outer systems. Multiple species, all heading toward human space. Our long-range sensors estimate at least 12,000 ships. The room fell silent. Jack felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. 3 months ago, he had been a simple exploration commander. Now he was responsible for preparing humanity to face the greatest threat they had ever encountered. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Based on their current speed, approximately 6 weeks," the officer replied. Jack looked around the table at his fellow knights. He saw the same determination in their faces that he felt in his heart. They had been chosen to carry on the legacy of the Stellar Knights, and they would not fail in their duty. "Send messages to all knight academies," he ordered. "Begin emergency training protocols. Contact the World Council and all colonial governments. Tell them we're about to face our first real test as knights." Lisa placed her hand on his shoulder. "We'll be ready, Jack. The knights failed before because they forgot what they were fighting for. We won't make that mistake." As the senior knights began preparing for the coming war, the knight technology throughout human space began to glow more brightly. It was as if the ancient power could sense the approaching danger and was preparing itself for the battle to come. Legend of the Knights had been reborn, but now it would be tested in the fires of war. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning. Jake Henderson was teaching a group of new knight candidates on New Texas when the alarms began screaming. The sky above them filled with enemy ships, their dark hulls blocking out the sun. "Everyone, to the shelters," Jake shouted, but it was already too late. Energy beams rained down from the hegemony fleet, targeting the Knight Academy first. Jake's armor activated automatically, protecting him from the blast that destroyed the training center. Hannah White grabbed her communication device as explosions shook the ground around them. "This is Night White to all stations. New Texas is under attack. Repeat, we are under attack." Similar messages flooded the communication networks as 12 human worlds came under simultaneous assault. The hegemony had planned their strike perfectly, hitting every major Knight Academy and training center at the same time. On Luna, Jack Morrison watched the tactical displays with growing horror. Red warning lights showed attacks on Mars, Europa, New Geneva, Titan Base, and 8 other colonies. The enemy had committed over 3,000 ships to the assault, far more than humanity's small defense fleet could handle. "How many knights do we have ready for combat?" he asked Lisa, who was coordinating medical support from the Luna Academy. "Maybe 200 fully trained knights," she replied, her face pale. "Against 12,000 enemy ships. The odds were impossible, but—" Jack remembered his trial in the dark chamber. There was always hope, even when everything seemed lost. "Send the message to all knights," he ordered. "This is what we trained for. Protect the people. Work together. And remember what Zephon told us. The technology responds to pure hearts." On New Texas, Jake and Hannah were learning this lesson firsthand. Surrounded by enemy soldiers who had landed near the Academy ruins, they found themselves outnumbered 50 to 1. Jake's tactical systems should have told him to retreat, but instead they showed him something else. "Hannah, look at your scanner," he said, pointing to the readings on her armor display. "Those aren't all enemy soldiers. Some of them are slaves, forced to fight." Hannah studied the readings more carefully. The Knight technology was somehow showing her the difference between willing attackers and unwilling conscripts. "You're right. At least half of these soldiers don't want to be here." Instead of fighting their way out, Jake made a decision that would have seemed crazy to any normal military commander. He activated his armor's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. "Attention all soldiers," his voice echoed across the battlefield. "We are the Stellar Knights. We are here to protect people, not to kill them. Any soldier who lays down their weapons will be given food, medical care, and safe passage home. The enemy commander laughed over the communication channel. Foolish humans. We did not come here to surrender to you. But something unexpected happened. Several of the enemy soldiers stopped shooting. A few actually dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Jake's offer of mercy was reaching the conscripts, who had been forced to fight against their will. Hannah used her medical scanner to identify wounded soldiers on both sides. Jake, there are injured people all over this battlefield, enemy and friendly. Then let's help them, Jake said simply. The two knights began moving across the battlefield, healing wounded soldiers regardless of which side they fought for. Their armor glowed brighter with each act of mercy, and their abilities grew stronger. Enemy soldiers who had been ready to kill them moments before now watched in amazement as the knights saved their fallen comrades. Word of what was happening on New Texas spread quickly through both human and enemy communication networks. On other battlefields, knights began following Jake and Hannah's example. Instead of focusing only on victory, they focused on protection and mercy. A turning point came at the Battle of New Geneva. Knight Captain Lisa Carter arrived with a small fleet of human ships to find the colony under siege by a massive hegemony force. The enemy had surrounded the planet and was preparing to bombard the civilian population. Lisa's tactical officer reported the situation. "Ma'am, they have us outnumbered 10-1. Our weapons can't penetrate their shields." Lisa studied the enemy formation, her enhanced night senses showing her details that normal scanners missed. "Look closer," she told her crew. "Those aren't all military ships. Half of that fleet is made up of converted cargo vessels and civilian transports." She opened communication channels to the enemy fleet. "This is Knight Captain Lisa Carter of the Stellar Knights. I can see that many of your ships are not true warships. How many of your crews are here because they want to be, and how many are here because they have to be?" The hegemony commander responded angrily. "Surrender now, human, or we will destroy your entire world." But Lisa's message was not meant for the commander. It was meant for the crews of those converted ships, the ordinary people who had been forced to participate in this war. Her words were broadcast on emergency frequencies that reached every ship in the enemy fleet. "We offer healing to any who are wounded," she continued. "We offer food to any who are hungry. We offer freedom to any who are enslaved. The choice is yours." What happened next shocked everyone. 3 enemy ships broke formation and moved toward the human fleet. Then 5 more, and dozens. Within an hour, nearly half of the hegemony force had defected, their crews choosing Lisa's offer of mercy over their commanders' threats of violence. The remaining enemy ships found themselves outnumbered and surrounded. Some fought on, but others surrendered when they realized the battle was lost. But the war was far from over. The dark cultists who had served the fallen knights revealed themselves, launching attacks that were far more dangerous than anything the hegemony had attempted. These ancient enemies did not just want to defeat the new knights. They wanted to corrupt the knight technology itself. Ryan Blake encountered this threat on Europa base when his engineering station began malfunctioning. During a battle, the knight technology that had always responded to his good intentions suddenly started working against him. His repair tools shocked him when he tried to use them. His armor systems gave him false information. "Something's wrong," he reported to Jack over the communication link. "The knight technology is turning against me." Jack's voice was grim. "It's happening on other worlds, too. The enemy has found a way to corrupt the knight power." Ryan fought against the corrupted technology, but it was like fighting against himself. Every ability that had made him a powerful knight was now being used against him. In desperation, he reached out to his fellow knights through the communication network. "I need help," he said. "I can't fight this alone." What happened next was something the original knights had never learned to do. Knights from across the galaxy linked their power together, sharing their strength with Ryan. The corrupted technology could not stand against the combined force of dozens of pure hearts working together. But Ryan realized something important. As the corruption faded, the darkness can only be cleansed by forgiveness, he told the other knights. I had to forgive the cultist who was trying to corrupt me. Hatred and anger just feed the corruption. This discovery spread quickly among the knights. On world after world, they found that mercy and forgiveness were more powerful weapons against the ancient darkness than any sword or energy blast. The war reached its climax when the cultists attempted to corrupt the Luna Academy itself, trying to turn the heart of the new Knight Order into a source of darkness. Jack Morrison stood in the main hall where they had first spoken with Zephon, facing a cultist who had once been a knight himself thousands of years ago. You cannot win, the cultist hissed. Power always corrupts. You will fall as we fell. Jack looked at the being who had once been a protector and now served only darkness. Maybe you're right about power, he said. But we're not fighting for power. We're fighting for each other. Around him, the night technology began to glow with a light brighter than it had ever shone before. Every knight in the galaxy was linked together, their combined strength flowing through the network they had built together. The cultists screamed as the light drove back the darkness, not through violence, but through the simple power of hope. Shared among friends, the war was not over, but the tide had turned. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when the legend of the knights was restored by people who understood that true strength came from lifting others up, not from standing above them. 6 months after the last battle of the Crucible War, Jack Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Round Table, watching ships from a dozen different species dock at the massive space station. The sight still amazed him. Humans, former hegemony soldiers, ex-cultists who had turned away from darkness, and aliens from across the galaxy were all working together. The war had ended not with total victory over the enemy, but with something far better. It had ended with transformation. Lisa. Carter approached him, carrying a medical report in her hands. The healing programs are working better than we hoped, she said. We've successfully treated the corruption sickness in over 3,000 former cultists. Most of them want to stay and help with the reconstruction. Jack nodded, remembering how surprised everyone had been when the first corrupted cultist had asked to join the knights after being healed. The ancient darkness that had twisted their minds for centuries could be cleansed, but it required something the original knights had never offered: complete forgiveness and a chance to start over. What about General Vex? Jack asked. Is he ready for the ceremony? Lisa smiled. He's nervous, but determined. I never thought I'd see a hegemony warlord worried about whether he's good enough to be a knight. General Vex had been Admiral Cronex's second-in-command before the war. During the Battle of New Geneva, he had been one of the first enemy commanders to surrender when he saw how the knights treated prisoners. Now, 3 months later, he was about to become the first non-human knight in the new order. The ceremony took place in the main hall of the new Round Table, a circular chamber with windows showing the stars in all directions. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness this historic moment. Jack stood at the center of the circle, wearing his blue and silver armor, while Vex knelt before him. The former hegemony general was a large reptilian, being with dark green scales and yellow eyes. His voice was deep and rough when he spoke the Knight Oath that had been rewritten by human values. I swear to protect those who cannot protect themselves, Vex said slowly, the words still unfamiliar in his mouth. I promise to share my strength with others rather than use it to control them. I will work with my fellow knights as an equal, not as a superior or a servant. I will choose mercy over vengeance, understanding over anger, and hope over fear. As Dex spoke these words, something remarkable happened. Knight armor that had been crafted specifically for his species began to glow. The technology that had once responded only to humans now accepted the former enemy general as worthy. "Rise, Knight Dex," Jack said, placing his hand on the alien's shoulder. "Welcome to the Brotherhood of the Round Table." The watching crowd erupted in cheers. Former enemies embraced each other. Human knights shook hands with aliens who had tried to kill them months earlier. The transformation was complete. Later that day, Jack met with the Council of Senior Knights to discuss the future. Emma Stone had returned from a mapping mission to the far edge of the galaxy. Ryan Blake reported on the construction of new knight academies on 30 different worlds. Lisa briefed them on the medical programs that were healing both physical and psychological wounds from the war. "The Galactic Concordat is almost ready to sign," Emma reported. 73 species have agreed to join. They want the knights to serve as peacekeepers and mediators. "That's more than twice the number of worlds the original knights protected," Ryan said with amazement. "And we're doing it with cooperation instead of force." But Jack had learned not to take success for granted. What about the holdout systems? Are there still groups that oppose us? Emma consulted her navigation charts. A few pirate groups and some isolated hegemony loyalists. But they're getting smaller every day. Most of their members keep defecting to join us. The door chimed, and Keeper Zephin entered the room. The ancient alien had been revived by Lisa's healing technology, though he remained weak. He now served as the Knight's historian and advisor, helping them learn from the mistakes of the past. "There is something I must tell you," Zephin said, his crystalline form pulsing with gentle light. "I have been studying the ancient records, and I have discovered something important about why the original knights failed." The human knights leaned forward to listen. "The old order was designed to be temporary," Zephin continued. "We were never meant to rule or control. We were guardians, waiting for a species that could truly embody the ideals we tried to uphold. The prophecies spoke of beings who would restore the legend, not by repeating it, but by improving it." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying we were destined to find you?" "Not destined," Zephin corrected. "Hoped for. The first knights always believed that someone would come who could do better than they had done. You have proven that belief correct." 6 months later, Jake Henderson and Hannah White led the graduation ceremony for the newest class of knights at the Academy on New Texas. The rebuilt training center was bigger and better than before, with facilities for a dozen different species. Among the graduating students were humans, hegemony refugees, former cultists, and aliens from species that had never heard of the Knights before the war. They all wore armor designed for their unique biology, but they all carried the same commitment to protection and cooperation. "Remember," Jake told the new graduates, "being a knight is not about the power you have. It's about how you choose to use that power. You are not rulers or conquerors. You are servants and protectors." One of the new knights, a young woman named Betty Davis, who had survived the attack on New Texas, raised her hand. "Sir, what if we face a situation where we can't help everyone? What if we have to choose?" Jake smiled, remembering his own doubts when he first became a knight. "Then you find a third option. The knight technology responds to creativity and compassion. If you truly want to help everyone, it will show you a way." As the ceremony ended and the new knights prepared for their first assignments, Jake received a message from the deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors had detected something at the very edge of the galaxy, ancient structures that might be ruins from the first civilization that created the knight technology. "It looks like our work is just beginning," Hannah said as she read the report. "Good," Jake replied. "The galaxy is a big place, and there are a lot of people who need help. Far across the galaxy, on a world where the original knights had never set foot, a young alien looked up at the stars and saw ships bearing the symbol of the new round table approaching his war-torn planet. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before: hope. The legend of the knights had not just been restored. It had been transformed into something better than it had ever been before. Where the old order had been rigid and hierarchical, the new knights were flexible and cooperative. Where the original knights had worked alone, the new ones worked together. Where the ancient order had tried to impose peace through strength, the new knights brought peace through understanding and mercy. Commander Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship as they prepared to depart for the edge of the galaxy. Around him, his crew worked with the efficiency that came from years of trust and friendship. Through the communication network, he could feel the presence of thousands of other knights spread across the stars, all working together toward the same goal. The knight technology hummed quietly in his armor, responding to his peaceful intentions. Through his enhanced senses, he could see the path ahead, not just through space, but through time. There would be new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities to help people. But whatever came next, humanity and their alien partners would face it together. The legend of the knights would continue to grow and change, carried forward by beings who understood that true strength came not from standing above others, but from lifting them up. The stars awaited, and the knights were ready to answer their call.